morning. Ramon Foster, Will Boling, Robert Walsh, Kayla with the morning off, as we are joined by our good friend Brent Hubbs of VolQuest and On 3, previewing Tennessee and Ohio State. Ohio Stadium. Of course, right here, courtesy of the Vol Network, where you'll hear Brent as well here on The Zone tomorrow. Brent, good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Hope you guys are doing well. Early Merry Christmas to everybody, and let's go play a little football and see what this thing looks like. Should be fun.
Yes, sir. It feels like Christmas Eve in a lot of ways, doesn't it? As Tennessee prepares for tomorrow. We've spent so much time, Brent, analyzing this matchup and diving into every facet of it. As you hone all that into one big thing, one big key, in your opinion for Tennessee, where is this game won or lost tomorrow night?
Oh, in the line of scrimmage. Tennessee's got to be able to run the football, and they've got to limit. They really got to be able to run the football, I think, is where it looks at. You look at Ohio State's 2 losses this season. They gave up 150 yards in both those losses. Outside of that, they've given up less than 125 yards in every game. So I think Tennessee's ability to run the football is vital. I don't think they got to go for 250 or anything, but they have to effectively run the football. And help Nico out offensively if they're going to win this football game.
A lot will be made, Brent, about the matchup in the red zone, how good Ohio State is in red zone offense and defense. Tennessee can match them with a great red zone defense, not so much on the offensive side. How can Tennessee maybe do some different things? How do they, in your eyes, unlock that offense a little bit when the field gets condensed?
Well, I think they got to be creative. I mean, you go back to the Georgia game, and they ran the little tight end dive to Kitzelman. We hadn't seen that play before. They ran some motion stuff late in the year. In the Alabama game, they moved Brazel into the slot to run the slot fade for the touchdown there. I think inside the 20, it's all about matchups and how do you schematically get the matchup that you want, that you can win with. Here's an interesting stat for everybody this morning. In SEC play this year, Tennessee has been inside the opponent's been at the 35-yard line or closer to the goal line 12 times this season and have come away with no points in SEC play. I mean, that in a nutshell is why the offense feels like it's been so hard this year, is they've just missed out on so many opportunities on the plus side of the field. Tennessee, if they get to the Ohio State 35-yard line or in, you got to come away with points. Touchdown, field goal, something. You can't come up empty-handed. Tennessee's done that too many times in SEC play this year. I think that's going to be another huge thing to watch in this game.
Brent Hubbs of VolQuest and On 3 with us this morning. Hubbs, man, happy Friday, my brother.
Happy Friday, my friend. Hope you're well. Merry Christmas. Hope you got the smoker ready to go. And I may call you later for some how to stay warm tips. You played in Pittsburgh along the river where it was a little windy. I'm not sure exactly what we're getting into, what I'm getting into. I know what the team's getting into. I don't know what I'm getting into Saturday night. I might be a popsicle by the end of this thing, but I'm looking forward to it, buddy.
I might have to come find you, Hubbs. I think I'm more than certain I'm making this trip over there, too,
there
man,
you go.
Indianapolis.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, we'll be up there.
Yeah, we will, man. With that being said, so you mentioned just the playmakers and getting, the plus side of the field. What is the health of a guy like Squirrel White or Brew McCoy or the never-ending question of Mike Matthews? What are they doing to have those guys readily available to make plays on the plus side?
Well, I think Mike should have taken a good bit of confidence away from the Vanderbilt game. He got the 1 touchdown, probably should have had another one. He was open, and they just missed him. So I think that Mike is more comfortable where he's at right now in his game, and I think the time off here has only further helped that. I think he's starting to figure it out as a freshman. So I think he'll be in the rotation and will play some. Brew's healthy. Brew's fine. Should be good to go. The hamstring has not given him any difficulties, so it shouldn't be an issue, unless something flares up in warm-ups. Squirrel's going to play, but, I mean, he's not going to be 100%. I don't think he's been 100% for 2.5 months now. He's got both shoulders are a little bit banged up here. So, we'll see how much he goes. And if he is limited in any way, Ramon, I think that's the other question is what does Tennessee do schematically then and personnel-wise? With Chaz Nimrod in the portal and no longer a part of this team, do you trust a guy like Braylon Staley who's played in 4 games this year, mop-up duty, and probably has 30 snaps under his belt? Do you go 2 tight ends and take the slot off the field? Do you move Brew into the slot? What about Ethan Davis? Could he play some slot receiver for you in some matchup stuff? I think that slot position behind Squirrel White and how they manage that position if White's not on the field is intriguing to watch. I'm kind of curious, particularly down in the plus territory, could you use Ethan Davis in that situation? Big body guy, good athlete who was a big receiver in high school. Could you use him for some advantages, with X's and O's and matchups? Or do you slide a guy like Brazel inside, or do you slide McCoy inside? I mean, McCoy and Brazel both have red zone touchdowns out of the slot position, so you could move them around a little bit. So we'll see what they do when Squirrel's not on the field. But we know they like that 2 tight end stuff. They've run a bunch of it all year long.
Hubs, when it comes down to this matchup, man, it's been a couple of weeks that they can prepare, and all things I've ever known in football is it's a copycat league. The way I'm sure the Vols have looked at everything Michigan did and Oregon and whoever else has had an advantage against Ohio State. I say that to say in the last game that the Vols lost against Georgia, Georgia did a pace situation with them where they got to the line of scrimmage and did not allow that 13-deep rotation of defensive linemen and personnel to change out. I have to ask a slick question because I don't know if it's legal or not. But in the college football playoffs, can players just drop down and fake an injury essentially to change personnel, or are they still subjected to getting fines? And I say that because I feel like that's what Georgia did to where they didn't allow Tennessee to change out personnel.
Well, I mean, have they fined anybody yet?
I don't think so.
No, there you go. I think that's a rhetoric deal. I mean, until somebody does that, I think that's. And that was an SEC deal. I don't think anything's going to happen there. I do think tempo is going to be really interesting to watch here. Ohio State has not played with much tempo, but we know Chip Kelly's history, that they're more than happy to get into tempo. So do they do what you're saying, sprint to the line of scrimmage and try to get some things going there? On the flip side, does Tennessee try to go tempo against Ohio State and play fast, which they've done some this year, but they haven't been their typical fast self. Do they do that? I think that's, you're talking about copycat league. You got 3 weeks to sit around and have too many meetings to draw up too many things and to think of too many ideas. How many ideas do you come up with, and how many of them do you try? Here's the other thing with Ohio State's offense against Tim Banks' defense. Where's the tight end, which Georgia obviously used to their advantage? But here's the other thing. There's some similarities in what Bobby Petrino can do and Chip Kelly has done through the years. So is Ohio State going to be hard-headed and try to run between the tackles like they did against Michigan, which angered every Ohio State fan and ultimately was a big part of why they didn't win that game? Or do they go sideways? Do they play to Carnell Tate? Do they play to Jeremiah Smith and that core of wide receivers and play some wide receiver screens, some bubble screens, jet sweeps, all that kind of stuff? I mean, go back to that Arkansas game. How many times did Tennessee see jet sweep action, whether the guy got the ball or not, to try to get the linebackers out of position? Sometimes they would run that jet sweep action and then run a little trap on the backside, almost a counter with their running back. What does Ohio State do? Where do they look at Tennessee's struggles and say, man, we can really attack them there? I think their best strength is those speed guys outside, which sounds crazy for Ohio State, which you think Big Ten, between the tackles, almost I formation football. I think they're probably better equipped to go at Tim Banks' defense if they kind of spread you out a little bit and play more to the perimeter and make those linebackers run and then try to free up the middle of the field there. Do they do that? And then obviously how much can Tennessee on the other side successfully run the ball and get Ohio State's defense on their heels that way?
VolQuest Brent Hubbs joining us this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Brent, I love the answer from Josh Heupel the other day saying we are exactly who we have been. There is nothing new. And if you're just listening to the audio of that on the radio, you think, oh, that's interesting. And then you see the smirk from Josh Heupel as he answers that question. What, hypothetically, could Tennessee implement? What kind of wrinkle are we talking about here that could be something different Tennessee can try at this point?
Well, I don't know that there's a ton in terms of personnel. I mean, I don't think Boo Carter is going to come out and play, 10, 12 snaps of offense or anything like that. But I wonder if Tennessee gets into some eye candy stuff. They've not been a big shift motion team. Do they get into some of that stuff? Do they just show some things that we have not seen with some more, rubs or different types of routes, different concepts of some things? I mean, that there's no doubt that they will have a wrinkle or two. Ohio State's going to have some wrinkles. I think this is a game of adjustment. How much do you adjust? How quickly can you adjust early on to what somebody's doing? And everybody sort of comes back to being who they've been all year long, because both teams are going to have something up their sleeve early in the game. Now, Josh Heupel's not a big trick play guy. I mean, if you think about it, you can probably think of a couple of trick plays off the top of your head. One of them was against UT Martin late in the fourth quarter when they threw a tight end pass. I mean, he's not really run anything from a trick play standpoint in critical situations. No fake punts, fake field goals. That's just kind of not been his MO. I don't think you're going to suddenly see that. I think it would be more subtle things that maybe fans don't necessarily recognize, with just the way they invert some receivers or the way they adjust some route things, stuff like that. Ohio State's going to play a bunch of man coverage. Now, can Tennessee win man coverage? I mean, can they win the physical war outside? Are they going to get grabbed, tugged, held? Are the officials going to throw flags on that? Are they going to let it go? We saw in 22 when Tennessee went to Athens, Georgia, Kirby Smart said, hey, I'm good with a penalty. I'll take 2 or 3 of them in the first 18, 20 minutes of the game, because at some point they're going to leave the flag in their pocket. They're not going to call it every play. Is that the style of play Ohio State plays with? They've been pretty handsy in terms of, aggressive out on the perimeter. Are they allowed to play that way, or is it called pretty tight? All of those things you have to adjust to as the game gets started. And so it'll be fun to watch both coordinators adjust and play the chess match that they're playing.
It's interesting, Brent. Jim Knowles, the Ohio State defensive coordinator, comes from the Big 12 and the ACC, where he will have seen a lot of offenses out of the Art Briles tree and similar systems a bit to Tennessee. But this is not a common offense in the Big 10. And we speak about maybe SEC defenses. There's only so much adjusting you can do over time, right? But they've at least been there. They know what the tempo feels like kind of in the moment. How significant of a storyline is that, in your opinion? Just the fact that this is a much different style of offense, much different scheme for an Ohio State defense that is much more used to the Penn States, the Iowas, and the Wisconsins of the world than they are programs like Tennessee.
Well, that's why you go back to the key. I think a key in this game for both offenses is winning early downs. Tennessee can't get into tempo if they're in 2nd and 12. If they're winning on first down, then you can get into tempo and get going. But if you're behind the sticks, it's harder for them to get into tempo because they've got to get in a better play. All of a sudden, what you thought you were going to be calling, I mean, you don't sit there with 2 plays in mind going, okay, here's our tempo 2nd and 12 call if we go -2 on first down. That's just not the way this thing works with anybody in tempo offense. So Tennessee's got to win early downs offensively to get tempo going. I think they would like to play with pace and see how Ohio State reacts to that. But again, you got to win early downs to do that. On the flip side, Tennessee would very much like for Will Howard to have to throw the ball vertically down the field. They would like for Ohio State to be in 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s. They don't want them in 3rd and 2 all the time, because it opens up all the playbooks. So can Tennessee win early downs and force Ohio State into 3rd and long situations? Then you can bring that A-gap blitz. You can bring extra people in the middle, try to get in Howard's face, because the weakness of Ohio State's offensive line is guard, center, guard. So can you affect the quarterback that way? Well, it's hard to affect him on a 3-step drop or a quick game out wide if they're winning on first down and staying ahead of the stick. So I think first down production is going to be critical here. Last thing on that, Ohio State's last 3 games they played, the opponent has not had more than 60 snaps. They've had less than 60 snaps in all 3 of those games. They're slowing tempo down, playing a little ball control. Tennessee doesn't want to play a game where you have 58 snaps. They want to play a game where you got 75 snaps. Early down production will be a big factor in this game.
About that 3-step drop, man, the D-line got to be smart. This is why I don't want to be aggravated. It's like, dumb D-lineman, not calling them dumb, but like, get your hands up.
You call D-lineman dumb all the time.
Because
what are you talking about?
If you're not going to get there and they're quickly releasing the football, why am I trying to sack somebody? Get your hands up and deflect the ball. Like, be a smart football player is all I'm asking, Hubs, before I go to my next question, okay?
Well, don't freelance.
Yeah,
what you do. You got to play within the framework of what they're asking you to do.
And that's all I'm saying. You do that, and Will Howard feel like he's got to make plays and hold on to it a little bit longer. They swat, Watt swat a couple of times, J.J. Watt, then they'll have something, I think, to work with in that situation right there. With that being said, though, Hubs, I got to get down to the bone gristle of this thing real quick, okay?
To the gristle?
Yeah, to the gristle. I got to go and get down.
on this for a minute.
I've been on this one because this is where a lot of anxiety of Vols fans and everything else comes into play with this next question. All right, when you look at what Ohio State is, their roster is probably the best one left in the college football playoffs, even if they ain't got a bye, right? 2 losses on it, too. Do you look at them as far as Tennessee being able to compete and belong in this thing, Hubs, as a impossible task of like taking on Georgia or Tennessee versus Alabama about 4 years ago before we started to even this thing up? Or do you look at the Vols versus Ohio State and say, this team can compete and play and beat that team, that roster? Like, because I feel like a lot of folks nationally or even some of the fan base feel like Tennessee ain't good enough, Hubs. You 10-2 for a reason. How do you view their roster, this matchup, versus what the Vols have seen?
Well, I think it's a matchup of strength versus strengths, okay? Both teams have given up 9 rushing touchdowns this year. Both teams have only given up 33 points in the first quarter this year. Both teams gave up 150 yards or more in their 2 losses, so you got to be able to run the football. Both teams have only given up 2.8 yards a rush in 2024. Both teams are ranked in the top 5 in FBS in scoring defenses. It is strength versus strength. Whose strength shows up and who can chip the armor in the other team's strength. Okay, I don't think this is going to be a game where both teams are scoring 30 points and we're in a shootout. I'll be stunned if that's the case. So when that happens, then it's about you playing to your strength and you being you, which is why Tennessee's got to run the football. That's who they are. Ohio State needs to throw it a little bit more because they are not as great of a running team as they've been in the past. Their best strength is their speed guys on the perimeter. How do they get them the ball? Carnell Tate had 10 targets in the Michigan game in that loss. They want to get the ball out in space and let them go play. This is the most talented roster Tennessee's played this season, in my opinion. But I do think it's a matchup that makes for a great matchup. Now, when you have 2, quote, evenly matched or fairly evenly matched teams, what does it come down to? It comes down to the intangibles, the little things, hidden yards and special teams. Hey, here's a novel thought. Don't give up kickoff returns, right? What else does it come down to? Don't turn the football over. That's a given every game. But what about the penalty factor? Tennessee's averaging nearly 10 penalties a game in road games this year. You go up there, you play an evenly matched team, and you commit 10, 12 penalties for 100 yards, you got real problems. You got to win the intangibles when you're evenly matched. And I think these 2 teams are evenly matched, whether one's got more 5 stars than the other one's got. I think when you look at the way they played this year, the style of play, who they are, there's a lot of similarities. It's good versus good. When you have that, you got to do the little things well if you're going to win, and that's the key for Tennessee Saturday night.
My man.
VolQuest's Brent Hubs. How incredible is it? We're talking about a playoff game. If you had told us 5 years ago, I mean, truly, Brent, I know you've written about this.
5 years ago.
I mean, heck, even less than that. You're 100% right. I do think there is an element, like you said, of this is Christmas Eve in a lot of ways. And regardless of how this game goes, Brent, man, it is a good time to be a Vol right now.
Well, it is. And here's the thing. I mean, there is and I love the way Josh Heupel has talked about it. You can't just be satisfied being there, okay? And nobody should say, well, we got there, that's good, it's all gravy from here on out. That's not the way you want to think. That's not the mentality you're supposed to have as a competitor, even as a fan. But I'll remind everybody of this. We are, 5 years, getting ready to be 5 years away from a press conference in the North Studio at the Neyland Thompson Sports Complex where we all walked out of there and went, what in the world is Dondi Plowman doing? She just openly admitted that this thing was a disaster, and there are more violations against this program than she could even count at this point. What kind of road is this thing going down? How dark is this cloud? You thought you were at rock bottom. Man, rock bottom may be further down. There may be a few more floors to that. And you thought, man, she had made a huge mistake. It turns out she was playing chess and everybody else was playing checkers, and Tennessee is now sitting in a position where they're one of the best athletic departments in the country in all sports, but they took football from its darkest days and have put you on the eve of Christmas getting ready to play in the college football playoff against Ohio State in Columbus, Ohio. It is a remarkable turn and a remarkable build that she engineered with that press conference to start that process that day that Josh Heupel and his staff have carried through. And that's why we're all getting ready to go to Columbus, Ohio this afternoon and get ready to watch Tennessee and the Buckeyes play tomorrow night with a chance to go win the biggest prize of all in college football.
Dang. Man, I'm glad there's not a brick wall nearby. I'd run right through it. That was awesome, Brent. Real quick, on the way out, Grant R. in Blount County. We've got to give him a holiday question. How do the rules at Ohio Stadium compare to the rules at The Rock, Brent?
Well, I mean, based on everything we've seen, you can't write on the walls at Ohio Stadium. But I can tell you what. It sounds like Tennessee's on a full invasion up there. So there may be some rules for the Buckeye fans up there that Tennessee fans bring they're not prepared for. So, I mean, listen, this thing's going to be wild. I know Tennessee fans, when they get the idea that they can go affect the game on the road the way they think they can right now, they're going to show up in droves. And this thing is going to be a blast. I'm not sure Ohio State knows exactly what's coming to town. I'm not sure how ready for it their fan base is. But it should be it should be a lot of fun. That's for sure. I'm looking forward to it. I know a bunch of Tennessee fans are as well.
Yes, sir.
VolQuest, Brent Hubbs, Friday mornings here on the show. Brent, have a Merry Christmas. We may see you up there tomorrow night in Columbus. Enjoy it and appreciate you as always.
I appreciate it, guys. I'll be the guy in a lot of gear. Perfect. Put his arms down by his side.
You and me both.
That guy, that's me. All right.
Yes, sir.
I love it. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Hubbs.
Thanks, guys.
There's Brent Hubbs with us here this morning. He's preaching.
I forgot about the Don D presser. I forgot all about
Come a long
that.
way. Brent Hubbs brought to you by Ascend Federal Credit Union, your financial partner for every stage of life.